Miami beats Ohio State. I did not see this one coming.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a live reaction episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day in post-college football viewing. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for helping make that the case, especially my everydayers. What comes next for Ohio State? I'm talking about Miami first. Does this playoff format need to change? That's all on this episode, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Okay, I was wrong. I was wrong. Can't be right 100% of the time. I tell you what, given the way the playoff games have gone so far and my selections, I am considering just never picking a college football game again because I might get blamed by fan bases across the country for causing their team to lose. But it's early. It's very early in that regard. So Miami beats Ohio State. They're going to the national playoff semifinal, and I did not see this one coming. Miami fans were very upset with me because I said after Texas A&M, don't buy it. Don't like the way that they played. Congrats on getting the win. Great teams find a way. They found a way for sure. But I said, no, I don't buy Miami. I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State. The Buckeyes are going to cruise. Miami fans, send me all the hate, all the comments, all the DMs. I deserve it. I deserve it across the board because Miami just went out and took the game. Ohio State didn't give it to them. That wasn't the Buckeyes making a series of self-inflicted mistakes other than a missed field goal. No, that was Miami just going out and outplaying Ohio State for 4 quarters of football. That's what we all just watched. That's what Mario Cristobal's team just did. Went on the road and beat an 11-1 team out of the SEC in Texas A&M, and then beats the reigning national champs by 10 points? By 10? Even the most confident Miami fans, did you have 10 points on your bingo card? If you did, congratulations. You got a prediction right. You nailed it. But full credit. Full credit. This game was won in the trenches. This game was won. What do you know? Another big game, and the team that ran for more yards won. Boy, that seems to be a theme. Mark Fletcher ran the ball incredibly well. Miami's offensive line was outstanding. Miami's defensive line was even better. And that was the fundamental difference in this football game. Ohio State could not run the ball. Julian Sayin was sacked 5 times. And even when it looked like Ohio State was starting to get a little bit of a rhythm, Miami had the adjustments. You know, I've said the name Corey Heatherman a few times on this show over the last several months. I haven't said it enough. And that's where I went first. Do you remember what this Miami defense was last year? Progress from a year in which the defense was bad to the next year to a program like Miami. Yeah, that's expected. That's warranted. That's what should happen if you go and make the right defensive coordinator hire, as Mario Cristobal clearly did. But this has gone from a weakness that's holding them back to an outright strength that they are riding to being 2 wins away from winning a national championship. That's what we're looking at here. Mario Cristobal made a home run hire, and Corey Heatherman's defense is darn good. And I think that at every single level of the defense, they are incredibly good, well-schemed, well-coached, and they've got NFL caliber guys. Because you probably think a lot about the defensive line, who were huge in this football game. Absolutely, positively massive, without question. Ruben Bain, Ohio State couldn't block him. Akeem Mesidor, yeah, they weren't really blocking him a whole lot either. But the moment that this game really went in Miami's favor was not a play that either of those guys made. And it was the attention to detail, knowing tendencies, and identifying a formation, and the interception return for a touchdown that put Miami up 14-0. That is when I think all of us collectively were watching the game and went, whoa. It's one thing that Miami scored first and drove down the field. Okay, you figured they were going to get one drive offensively. That's what I thought in this game. I thought they would have one offensive touchdown drive. They, of course, had more than that. But frankly, the Ohio State defense, I didn't feel like was a problem for the Buckeyes. That comes later on the show. But the attention to detail, executing in situational moments, and just dominating up front. The broadcast highlighted what is absolutely true for Mario Cristobal and has always been a foundational part of his identity, building a team on both sides of the ball from the inside out. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like right there. I randomly had this thought, probably because they beat Vanderbilt earlier today. If Iowa were to ever make a run in the college football playoff, it would look a lot like that. You're just winning with good line of scrimmage play on both sides of the ball. Your offense is not blowing anybody away. Carson Beck has thrown for 244 yards in 2 games. Miami's offense not lighting the world on fire. That's why I had my reservations, because I thought, I don't think you can do much against the Ohio State defense. Well, it turns out you don't need to do a lot if the defense is giving you 7 points and you're able to just do enough. And that drive at the end, boy, that was a championship drive. That was a championship drive. Game is on the line. 3-point game. You've got the lead. You've got what has been discussed as one of the best defenses in college football this year or in the last couple of years, and really has been, that has got first-round draft picks seemingly at every level of it again, and yet Miami just marched down the field. When their best was needed, their best showed up. And look, I'm someone who has taken more than a few, I feel like deserved shots, at Mario Cristobal's game planning, game management, play calling at times. I got no notes on this one, folks. And nobody else can either. That narrative goes quiet. People like me gotta eat some crow in that one. That's just the reality in this spot. Because Miami was ready to go. Miami made adjustments throughout the course of the game. And Miami executed in situational spots when they absolutely had to. So a hat tip to Mario Cristobal. Miami fans, let me hear it. I deserve it. I deserve it. I was a doubter. I'm not doubting again. I'm not doubting Miami again. I mean, until the next game when there's another chance to pick them to lose. Surely I'll do it again. At this point, don't we have a BYU relationship? Have we not gotten there? Maybe we haven't. Maybe you'd be okay with me picking Miami to win in the next round. We'll see how all of that goes down. But the statement that Mario Cristobal just made in year 4, I would have unequivocally deemed the season a success had Miami lost this football game. And I would have said, hey, Hurricanes fans, I think you should feel really good about the direction Mario Cristobal is going with this program. Look at the recruiting. Look at the on-field results. Look at the coordinator hires. These are the sorts of things that you want to see your head coach doing. Yeah, it's taken longer than some other places, but you're getting there. And now all of a sudden you have a win that elevates and just kind of justifies everything that Mario Cristobal's done over the last few years. Incredible win. Absolutely incredible win. And Mario Cristobal takes a lot of heat. You know why? Because somehow he lost games earlier this year to SMU and Louisville. I don't know how, because the talent on those rosters is nowhere near the talent that they just went toe-to-toe with. But this, in some ways, is a Mario Cristobal special. You can play with anybody in college football. You can also play down to anybody in college football. But guess what? I'd rather have that than a program that feels like it has a really high floor, Iowa, for instance, but doesn't have the ability to take that next step. Well, Miami clearly does. Miami clearly does. And here's another thing. What if the offense gets rolling? That defense is one of the best in all of college football. They have allowed 17 points in 2 games, and they haven't played a single one inside of their home stadium yet. What if the offense gets rolling? I mean, Mark Fletcher looked as good running the ball tonight as I have seen him all season long. And the way the game flowed, and Ohio State's got a great run defense, you're not going to face a defense as good as that Ohio State one And you're telling me Miami put up 24 points? No one had scored 20 or more. Granted, 7 came from the other side of the ball. But no one had put up 20 or more points in a game on Ohio State this season. And Miami just did. And again, I don't feel like the offense is fully clicking. I don't feel like Carson Beck is playing his best football, but he's playing winning football. That's what Carson Beck is doing right now. That's all that matters to Miami fans. He's playing winning football. But what happens if Carson Beck starts playing his best football? What happens if there's a game where CJ Daniels and Malachi Toney are the sort of dynamic tandem that you feel like are carrying the offense, and then you can lean on Mark Fletcher in the run, or vice versa, either one? What happens? Does Miami go win the national championship? Yeah, they absolutely could. Because coming into this bracket, I liked Ohio State a lot. I thought Ohio State, and said on this very show, I thought they were going to be the team that bucked the trend about the teams getting a bye, losing the game. Because they'd been in that spot before. Well, that conversation's coming later on this particular show. But I am truly surprised. I own it. I was wrong. Miami fans, I apologize. I was very, very wrong picking this particular football game. I did not think they had that much of a shot. And this absolutely shocked me. And Mario Cristobal and that staff and every single player in that locker room deserve a ton of credit. So keep leaving your YouTube comments here if you're watching live or if you're watching after the fact as well. What do we do with Ohio State? Well, it's not all bad news for the Buckeyes. First, this episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hope you're fading the best bets. That's the way that that's what I've been telling you to do all season long. And I thought Ohio State would win and cover. That was, boy. Of all the bad picks I've had this year, that's one of the worst by far. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. So this game was Ohio State minus 9.5, which goes to show you hypothetical betting lines should never be a justification for one team getting in over another or what a particular format should be or this team would be favored. You got to play the games on the field. And Miami, playing in a conference that has been widely seen this year as the fourth best of the Power Four, just went and beat the SEC and the Big Ten in back-to-back games. Well, that's a pretty good look. They couldn't even make their conference championship game. Stuff be wild. So, if you want to bet future playoff games or the NBA, NFL, anything, FanDuel has you covered. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA and the Locked On Network, of course. So what do we do with Ohio State? What happens with the Buckeyes? Look, certainly this feels bad. I mean, it's not a great look, and I'm sure there will be plenty of fans out there frustrated with, well, Brian Hartline was distracted. Ryan Day was calling plays. Well, Ryan Day was an OC before he was a head coach, and he's been a head coach and a play caller before. But I don't know that it was that. Was it the format? Yeah, I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But here's the good news for Ohio State and Ryan Day. This is like the most silver lining optimistic look that I can possibly give you in Columbus right now, but I think it's a pretty fair one, quite honestly. You just won a national championship. Can you imagine? Just go down hypothetical lane with me for a moment. If the playoff hadn't expanded to 12 teams until this season, if it had been 1 year later, just one, Ryan Day might not have been coaching in this game. I don't think he would be coaching Ohio State next year. The questions surrounding Ryan Day would rival that which we had discussions about regarding James Franklin. Can't win the big game. Oh, well, he broke through and beat Michigan, but then loses to Indiana and then loses to Miami as an almost 10-point favorite. Man, man, that's not acceptable. But at least if you're an Ohio State fan, guess what? Well, you just won a national championship. I'm not telling you to feel good about this or not criticize Ryan Day. I'm just saying it could be infinitely worse than what is currently happening. And we are so close to living in a wildly different timeline where we'd be having a dramatically different conversation. And yet Ryan Day is here, and you're not going to be able to ask questions about whether Ryan Day can win a big game. Yeah, he just lost the Big Ten championship and then the quarterfinal playoff game. You can't question whether he can win the big game. You can't question if he can get teams ready. You can't question any of those sorts of things. What you can question is the offensive game plan against this Miami defense. Now, adjustments were made at the half. Miami scoring or holding Ohio State to 0 points in the first half. Frankly, as I mentioned earlier, I felt was more about the Miami defense having a good game plan than it was Ohio State's offense playing poorly. But still, that's a horrible look for an offensive-minded coach like Ryan Day who's suddenly calling the plays. All those questions are going to get raised in the offseason. Is that the right thing to do? Who should they hire as offensive coordinator? Does it need to be someone that could take over the play calling duties? Chip Kelly just got hired to be the offensive coordinator at Northwestern. Should you poach him and try to get him back to Columbus? I mean, it went well last year when he was calling plays, and a little bit of a different outcome so far this season. But what I look at with Ryan Day is this is the life of a college football coach at this particular level. Are you going to think more about Ryan Day as the guy that put up 14 points, or was it 17 points? 14 points, yeah, 14 points. Are you going to think about him more as the guy that put up 14 points when you had so much time to prepare? Or are you going to think about him as the guy that took Ohio State on the longest run ever in college football playoff history to win a national championship? Which one's going to come to your mind first? I have a feeling I know which one. Excuse me for just one brief moment. Battling cold this time of year is tough, but at least I do this show from home. Anyway, so Ryan Day is a play caller. I don't know if one game is going to decide whether or not he continues being the play caller, regardless of who he hires as the OC. But his quarterback is coming back next year. At least I believe that's the situation. I don't know. It's college football. You never know. Jeremiah Smith still has to play another year of college football. I think they'll have plenty of other talent, and they'll be a really good football team once again. But yeah, it's not a great feeling. Here's another thing with Ohio State. Is this a moment where we'll look at what he's done in the college football playoff games and say he caught lightning in a bottle that one time, but everything else has fallen short of expectations? I'm not in that particular camp. I tend to give, more than some fans would like me to, a lot of leeway and latitude towards coaches that lose big games in these sorts of spots. Like, yes, Ohio State, on paper, should have won the game. They have more projected NFL talent than Miami does. They have a quarterback who's not as experienced, but is more talented and gifted than Miami's. They've got a better receiving core. But for Ryan Day, remember when he went through that feud with Lou Holtz a couple of years ago, and it was all about the toughness and the physicality? I think mentally he's going to go back to that and try to figure out, how can I get my team to be better up front? Because it was pretty shocking. I shouldn't say shocking. I need to do a couple tongue twisters. She sells seashells by the seashore. Anyway, the seashells that she sells are seashells, I'm sure. So I think he's going to go back mentally and say, man, I have got to get my team to be better up front. Even though they lost a bunch of talent from last year on both sides of the ball in the trenches, it's still surprising at some level. It's strange. It's odd. It's a little bit off-putting, even against a great Miami front, to see the offensive line just get mauled like that. I mean, I don't think it was about the scheme and the blitzes that Miami was coming with, no, they just couldn't block dudes. And yeah, they've got NFL guys in that front seven. But you're Ohio State. You're supposed to have that caliber of guys. And they just weren't ready to play to that level. They just were not. Miami was far more prepared. And Miami was playing with a much greater intensity up front. They ran the ball when they needed to. Ohio State ran the ball well for about 1.5 drives in the entire game. Carson Beck had too much time to throw. He was sacked 2 times. And he was not consistently under pressure the same way Ohio State was. By the way, speaking of Carson Beck, can we shout out that 3rd and 11 where he picks it up, running the ball, lowers the shoulder? I mean, truck stick. Oof. Oof. Boy, if you are a guy that loves toughness, Carson Beck embodied that on one particular play. Man, that was an awesome football game. Awesome football game. By the way, Miami on 3rd down, 7 of 14. Ohio State, 3 of 10. If I told you going into the game, Ryan Day against Mario Cristobal, one team's going to be 50% on 3rd down, the other one's going to be 30%. Who would you have attributed those particular stats to? I'll just call myself guilty in a hypothetical retroactive and say, well, Ryan Day is going to be 7 of 14. Mario Cristobal will be 3 of 10. Nope. Flipped it around. Hat tip. That was a hat tip moment to Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. So, yeah, the vibes in Columbus likely not very good. However, at least he won the national championship last year. Ryan Day's got to be thinking that right now. Like, boy, good thing I won it last year. We might have a problem in this particular moment. So it could be worse if you're a Buckeye fan. And I tell you what could be worse, but still needs to be better. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like college football season. I mean, how do you explain what we just did? Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets at great prices in just a few taps. So, if you want to go to Miami, who's now in the college football playoff semifinal, of course. If you want to watch them play in person, guess what? Game Time's the place to go. I've used Game Time to go to college football events, college basketball games. I don't know what events I was kind of referring to there. College football games, college basketball games, comedy events and shows. And Game Time's given me a great price every time, a great process. Game Time's just got everything you want. Trust me, you want to use them. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. So, want to talk about the format. Ryan Day, not likely to make excuses. Anybody that lost last year wasn't making excuses about it. But as coaches, it's their job to not talk about such things. It's our job in the outside space to talk about it. So I thought Ohio State would win the game. They had they didn't have as long of a layoff last year, but they didn't play in the Big Ten championship game, and then they didn't play for 3 weeks, and they came out against Tennessee, and they were ready to go. They're all ready to go. So teams that have had a bye in the 12-team college football playoff are now 0-5. And I do not believe that's going to continue forever. And notably, my picks have been scorching hot lately. But it's pretty clear that this format has to change. This cannot continue. One of two things, really both, need to happen with the playoff. Number one, get rid of the long gap. Start it right after conference championship weekend. You do not even have to eliminate bowl games. There were, 4 bowl games on today, which were fantastic, by the way. I'm one of these weird people that likes watching college football no matter what. I liked watching Iowa beat Vanderbilt. I liked watching Texas beat Michigan. It was an enjoy, but did you watch Duke and Arizona State? It was fun. It was a nice teaser for the playoff game. So you don't have to, make the argument or go down that path of, then we'd have to eliminate bowl games and ESPN doesn't want to do that. No, you don't have to do that. Just change the timing of it all. It's becoming more and more clear, and I don't know, I think after 2 years, we'll have a pretty solid amount of data. Now, in the first year, you do have to bake in that 2 teams had buys that, based on the committee's own rankings, weren't deserving of having buys, but that was Ohio State. Last year, it was Georgia. Oregon last year as well, the number 1 team in the country. Every single team that has had this long a layoff, they are trailing at the half. Every time. I'll wait for Thursday to play out before I definitively say it's not a coincidence. It sure doesn't feel like it. This is too long of a gap. So that's the first thing. The second thing is these teams should be playing home games. If you have earned the right to get a bye and be one of the top 4 seeds in all of college football for this playoff, guess what? You should be playing in front of your home fans. And you do not have to get rid of the first round games being played on campuses. But fans shouldn't get that benefit. You realize what it takes to be a fan and watch your team go win a national championship and all this if you want to go to every single game? It's insane. Let's take Miami, for example. You would have to book a trip on December, 20th? 19th? I think 20th. December 20th. For that weekend, you got to go to College Station. Then you go back to Miami. And then you just went to the Cotton Bowl. Okay, well, now you're going to go next round to the Fiesta Bowl. And then you would get a home game. I mean, last ones would be the easiest one to go to if you're a Miami fan. Playing these games. What about the students? You know what? One of the many things that separates college football from the NFL is a student section. You don't have a student section in any of these games because they're not being played on campus. And the playoff games are often being played when school is not in session anyway. Now, there's not always something you can do about that because of the timing of everything and Christmas break. But I was at the Oregon JMU game, and guess what? It was holiday break. Student section, packed to the brim. You got to make it easier for them to get to these games, for the fans, I mean. I'm someone that always tries to be very pro-fan here on the show. So I don't think that this format is sustainable. There are going to be meetings, and I'll talk about them here on the show in January about what the playoff format will be. I'm sure they'll expand it because there's money to be made. But the teams that have the best regular seasons and get the highest seeds should be the ones that get a home playoff game. And they shouldn't be waiting so long to play. Last year, the number 1 team, champions of the Big Ten. And the number 3 team? Number 2 or 3 team last year? Georgia, champions of the SEC. They both, the champions of the Big 12. They all came out in the first half, and they looked like they were trying to shake off a bunch of rust. This should not be a conversation. It is, but it shouldn't be, and it needs to change. So the straight seeding is better. The format from last year to this year, it has gotten better because of the straight seeding. But the long layoff and the lack of a home playoff game, Dan Lanning has said this about his game against Texas Tech on Thursday morning, West Coast time. He said this game should be in Lubbock. Texas Tech should get a home playoff game. He's 100% right. And he's saying that knowing, as someone who's gone and coached and barely 2 years ago won a football game in Lubbock, Texas, knows that that's going to make it harder for his team to win. Anyone that thinks about this, I don't know exactly who is going to make this decision. But at what point do we look and say, hey, the teams that are seated higher are clearly at more of a disadvantage because they're 0-5. If Oregon beats Texas Tech on Thursday, teams with a bye will be 0-6. That's feasible. I think either Georgia or Indiana is going to win. I think Georgia is winning. I think Indiana is winning. And I think Oregon's going to win, which of course means the opposite will happen in every single instance. But, well, I can't miss them every time. The best that bye teams could be after tomorrow is 3-5. That is not right. This is the greatest sport on planet Earth. But it is just structured so poorly in so many ways. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. So this has got to change. And if you have to have a bunch of these neutral site games, well, then that's what the first round game should be. Because the ultimate reward for getting a bye needs to be a home playoff game. Best for the school, best for the fans, best for the team. Because the teams that have had a bye and showed up at a neutral site game have been flat in the first half. Ohio State, goose egg in the first half. Oregon last year, 8 points in the first half. Arizona State last year, I think they had 3 points in the first half against Texas, and then they almost won the football game. And Georgia last year had, I think, 0 or 3 points in the first half against Notre Dame. At some point, like if Texas Tech and Indiana lose tomorrow and Georgia wins, and you're sitting there going, okay, but teams with a bye are 1-7, someone's got to speak up and say this is not sustainable, which is what I'm trying to do. So I'll wrap this reaction show there. But Miami fans, I owned it. I was very wrong. I was very wrong. I will not doubt you again. Until the next round, of course. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.